You feel the sounds first, the low, constant hum of the world pressing in from every side, the alerts, the fragments of conversation that slide past you like wind, the persistent inner commentary that never quite stops. It has become so familiar that you mistake it for the whole of reality. But in the small space between one breath and the next, you sense a different sound. It is not loud. It is not urgent in the way the world is urgent. It is closer than the breath you just drew, steadier than the anxious thoughts that rise when you lay your head down at night. It is the sound of presence. You are invited to notice it, not as a distraction but as the point of reference for everything else. You are told to still your limbs, to soften the rapid blink of the mind, and to let your inner world come into alignment with this subtle nearness. Stillness is not about shutting down. It is about tuning. You learn quickly that when you quiet the outward noise, putting aside the devices, stepping away from the clamor, you are not losing time. You are gaining sense. You discover that the life you thought required constant movement actually needs moments of collected silence to move rightly. In that collected silence, you begin to hear the voice that has been waiting. It speaks to you as one who knows you intimately, as if every worry you carried was a letter already opened and read. It doesn't chide you for your hesitation. It simply names the place where you stand, a threshold, and you feel its urgency, gentle but clear, not like a panic that propels you into frantic motion, but like a prompt to step with conviction. Listen, it says. Now is the season for response. Do not mistake this for a call to hurry. It is a call to attend. The tricky part for you has always been the temptation to wait for perfect clarity. You have learned to value certainty so much that you have sometimes let possibilities pass by because the lamp of understanding was not yet full. You are prone to pressing pause until the map fits into your hands in neat pieces. But the quiet voice warns you that waiting for perfect months or faultless conditions often becomes an excuse for remaining safe in smallness. The moment you are in now invites you to a different posture, a readiness that trusts even when the path is dimly lit. You feel resistance rise, images of failure, murmurs about timing, the worn-out narratives that say you are not ready. Those voices are familiar. They sound responsible and prudent. But the presence that draws near distinguishes itself by its steadiness, not its intensity. It does not promise ease where there will be none, but it promises company where you would otherwise be alone. It does not demand flawless preparation. It teaches preparation through presence. When doubt arises, you are gently asked to measure your hesitation against the small confirmations you've already received. The inner peace that comes when you quietly ask. The threads of opportunity that appeared unexpectedly. The doors that partially opened when you least expected them. So you practice holding two truths at once. You honor the need for wisdom while refusing the paralysis that comes from overanalysis. You learn that stillness can coexist with readiness. You keep your body outwardly steady while your heart quietly leans toward the next step. You let the rhythm of your breath become the metronome of your soul. Inhale, receive, exhale, release, move when prompted. In that measured cadence, you find that the voice's nudging is not an ambiguous whisper, but a precise encouragement to act with the small, faithful steps you can take today. Your readiness begins with attention. You are told to tune your senses to a different frequency, not the frequency of headlines or the metric of public approval, but the subtle signals that arise in sacred quiet. These signals may come as a quiet conviction that a particular conversation should happen, or as a persistent thought to try a modest experiment, or as a sudden idea that fills you with a lightness you cannot dismiss. Do not dismiss these as random. These are the breadcrumbs laid for you to follow. Your part is to notice them and to respond. You are also given permission to move imperfectly. There is a distinct mercy in being allowed to begin before you are fully ready. Growth rarely waits for total readiness. Most of your breakthrough steps in the past were not made because conditions were perfect. They were made because you took one brave choice, then another. The voice assures you that the preparation has been happening in unseen ways. Your life has been forming a capacity within you so that when you step, you will be steadier than you imagine. This does not mean there will be no difficulty. It does mean you will be met with more clarity, more strength, and more provision than you currently perceive. As you consider moving, you are cautioned against confusing anxiety with intuition. Both can quicken the pulse. Both can feel like compelling forces. Anxiety tends to narrow your vision and pull you back into safety. Intuition, especially the kind that aligns with this present nearness, widens your view and pushes you gently toward engagement. When you are unsure which is which, the safe posture is to return to stillness and ask, quietly, persistently, until clarity grows. Stillness does not remove the need for discernment. It refines it. You are invited, too, to protect the small space of quiet you have found. The world will encourage busyness as a virtue and loudness as currency. You may be tempted to prove yourself by matching the public rhythm. Resist that pull. Your movement into this new season will not be measured by volume but by fidelity. Keep your sacred hours where you meet what matters. Guard the beginning of your day with a simple habit of listening. Close certain doors that distract unnecessarily. Make room for the voice that has guided you thus far. Finally, as the stillness deepens, you begin to feel something settle beneath the surface of your worries. A quiet assurance that you are not being asked to manufacture your future alone. There is accompaniment, even in the ambiguity, so that the steps you take are not reckless leaps, but partnered advances. You are not being called to abandon reason. You are being asked to widen your reliance beyond what your eyes can catalog. There is a humble courage here, to move because you are held, to act because the way has been prepared, to trust that the voice near you will meet you in the doing. So you breathe again, letting the hush center you. The sounds of the world remain, but they no longer dominate the inner room. You keep your senses tuned to the nearer sound, the steady prompt that says, listen, come, begin. And because you hear it, you do not wait for everything to be spelled out. You step forward into the slight light given, trusting that with each faithful step, new clarity will come, and that what begins in the hush will open into a way larger than your fears. You begin to notice how often you've waited for certainty before you let yourself move, how many times you paused because the path didn't present itself with the kind of clarity that leaves no room for doubt. And yet, the presence that speaks to you now begins reshaping that entire instinct by revealing a different truth. Clarity grows after movement, not before it. You hear this gently but unmistakably. If I have stirred your awareness, if I have illuminated even the beginning of a direction, then the time for responding has already arrived. You feel the weight of that not as pressure, but as release. It frees you from needing to have the entire future mapped out before you dare to take a step. So you sit with this, letting each thought uncover another place where hesitation has held you still. You recall moments when you sensed an inner urging, a nudge that felt peaceful yet persistent, but you delayed, thinking you needed more evidence, more reassurance, more explanation. In those moments, you convinced yourself you were being wise, patient, careful. But the voice now reveals a truth you had not considered. Waiting for perfect security is often a hidden form of fear, not because fear is loud, but because it disguises itself as endless analysis, the kind of thinking that loops endlessly without producing any growth. The voice cuts through this cycle by saying, conviction becomes trust only when it becomes movement. You look inward and feel the tension between your desire for certainty and your desire to obey. You realize that both are strong, but one leads forward and the other holds you in place. You are reminded that in the times you learned the most, you did not have all the answers when you started. You stepped because something inside you felt alive, felt guided, felt pulled. Now the presence urges you to remember that pattern. Faith does not bloom in full daylight. It blooms in the dim glow that comes just before dawn, when you cannot see far, but you know the light is coming. You feel the voice drawing closer, uncovering the subtle ways hesitation steals opportunity. The presence explains, if you hesitate too long, you pause right outside the boundary of what I prepared for you. You hear that sentence echo in you, not in a fearful way, but in a way that clarifies the importance of responsiveness. What has been prepared for you does not vanish, nor does it expire, but it requires your participation. You must step into alignment with the timing already unfolding. And then, with tender firmness, the presence reveals what happens when you delay. Not punishment, but misalignment. Opportunities shift, connections fade, momentum quiets, and the season meant to lift you becomes the season you simply observe. The voice urges you not to fall into that pattern now. The moment before you is asking for engagement, not for certainty but for readiness. You feel yourself soften to this truth, not in defeat, but in acceptance. The presence reassures you, I do not require flawless execution. I require willingness. And suddenly the pressure eases. You don't have to be perfect, only engaged. You don't have to foresee the outcome, only trust that the one guiding you sees what you cannot. The presence begins teaching you how to recognize the difference between your own noise and genuine prompting. You are shown that the voice guiding you does not demand, does not push, does not frighten. It aligns with peace, even if it comes during difficult circumstances. You realize that anxiety makes you feel rushed and constricted, while divine prompting makes you feel steady, even when the instruction feels challenging. You learn to test inner urgings by asking, does this bring a quiet assurance? Does this increase my sense of connection? Does this align with peace rather than panic? When the answer is yes, it is time to respond. You are told something else, something you've needed to hear for a long time. You are not walking alone. I am not merely beside you. I am actively working in ways you cannot yet see. You feel the warmth of that truth settle over your inner life. You no longer have to carry the entire weight of execution. You are responsible for obedience. The presence is responsible for fulfillment. You hear, what I have prepared for you cannot be taken by adversity, cannot be disrupted by other people, and cannot be undone by your imperfections. Let that truth wash over you until your heart receives it. Your victory does not rest on your flawless performance. It rests on the faithfulness already promised to you. Still, the voice does not let you escape responsibility entirely. You are told with love. Genuine trust does not stay in the mind. It moves through your hands, your feet, your choices. The presence explains that knowing the path is not the same as walking it. A conviction held only in thought has no power to transform your life. Action, even small action, is where faith takes shape. So you are asked softly, are you willing to take the next step even before you understand why? Your heart answers yes, even if your mind is still catching up. The presence shifts now, revealing 3 guiding principles to anchor your readiness. First, you must cultivate intentional quiet, not simply the absence of sound, but a protected space where you tune your attention inward. This is where you learn to hear the subtle shifts, the soft nudges, the truth that doesn't compete for volume. You understand that without this quiet, even the clearest guidance feels distant. The presence tells you, meet with me not out of duty, but out of desire. Your spirit will sharpen as you lean in. Second, you must practice responding to the small urgings. The presence reminds you that large destinies often begin with simple steps. Sending a message, researching a possibility, starting a plan, organizing one corner of your life. These are not insignificant. They are signals that you trust what you hear. The presence repeats gently, do not ignore the small steps. They are the keys that unlock the larger ones. Third, you must silence the voices that pull you away. Not everyone will understand this season of your life. Some will call your movement impulsive because they cannot hear what is being whispered to you. You are told to stop seeking validation from those who do not seek the voice that guides you. It is not disrespect, it is discernment. If a voice weakens your confidence, create distance. If a voice deepens your clarity, draw near. You begin to see that readiness is not a mood. It is a discipline, a posture, a choice that you renew daily. And as all of this sinks in, the presence offers one final truth for this section. This is not a time for hesitation. It is a time for progression. The path ahead is already opening, not because you forced it, but because you aligned yourself with what was prepared. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are learning how to hear, how to trust, and how to move, one clear, courageous step at a time. You feel the shift happening inside you as the guidance becomes more practical, more grounded, more focused on how you are meant to prepare, not by striving, but by shaping your inner world in ways that match the future unfolding for you. You begin to realize that readiness is not something that appears on its own. It is cultivated, strengthened, honed. It is forged through deliberate choices repeated gently until your spirit becomes aligned with what is being given to you. And so the presence lays 3 pillars before you, 3 practices that are not complicated, yet hold tremendous power when embraced with sincerity. The first is intentional quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes when life finally settles, but the quiet you create on purpose, the quiet you protect. The presence shows you that this quiet is not empty, it is spacious. It is the place where your spirit learns to hear without strain, where you tune your inner ear to the soft, steady guidance always available. You learn that intentional quiet is not about doing nothing, it is about opening. You are invited to carve out moments, not long, not heavy with expectation, but consistent, where you step away from the noise just long enough to reconnect. As you imagine this quiet, you feel how necessary it is. You feel the way your spirit relaxes at the thought of it. You realize how much of your inner life has been pulled in 5 different directions at once. How many thoughts were competing for your attention. And in this quiet, there is no competition. There is only presence. You are told gently. In these moments, you will hear insights you have not heard before, because you finally created a space where they can land. You begin to understand that what you need has not been withheld. It simply could not reach you through the noise. The second pillar is small step obedience, not dramatic leaps, not life-altering decisions, but simple responses to gentle urgings. The presence makes this clear. If I nudge you toward something small, do it. If I press a thought into your spirit, explore it. If I whisper a direction, follow it. You are surprised how freeing this feels. You don't need to solve everything. You need only to respond. You are shown that your simple actions, sending a message, writing something down, preparing a space, rearranging plans, paying attention to an idea that keeps returning, are all spiritual movements. They are yeses as spoken not with your mouth, but through your choices. You realize that small steps have carried enormous meaning across your life. They have often been the beginning of your biggest transitions, even when you didn't recognize it at the time. Now, you are being taught to honor these small steps intentionally. Each act of obedience becomes a quiet declaration. I trust you more than my fear. I trust your leading more than my desire for full understanding. This becomes the rhythm that pulls you out of hesitation and into flow. Then comes the third pillar, silencing the voices that draw you away. This instruction arrives with a gravity you immediately feel. You understand that not every voice in your life is meant to shape your journey. Some are uncertain, some are fearful, some are skeptical because they cannot hear what you hear. And the presence reveals this truth with kindness but firmness. Do not seek validation from those who cannot perceive what I am doing within you. It doesn't come as a command to isolate yourself, but as an invitation to filter. You begin to notice how certain conversations leave you heavy, confused, or doubting, and others leave you calm, clear, assured. You are told to pay attention to this. Your spirit recognizes what your mind often overlooks. You are encouraged to distance yourself, even temporarily, from the voices that diminish your trust. Not to punish them, not to judge them, simply to guard your inner compass. The presence says, quiet the voices that weaken your confidence so you can hear the one voice that strengthens it. You realize now that readiness is not produced in one dramatic moment. It is cultivated through daily alignment. And as you internalize these three pillars, you feel your inner life shifting, firming, steadying, opening. Still, the presence is not finished. You are shown how these practices begin to change more than just your inner clarity. They begin to change how you carry yourself, how you respond to uncertainty, how you walk into the unknown. You start to understand that preparing your spirit is not only about receiving guidance, it's about becoming someone who can hold what is coming. You begin to see how intentional quiet cleanses the lens through which you perceive direction, how small obedience trains you to trust even when you cannot see the full picture, how silencing distracting voices strengthens your ability to stand firm in seasons where others might misunderstand your steps. And then the presence adds something deeper. When you prepare in these ways, you align your inner timing with the timing I have appointed. You feel that line settle inside you like an anchor. You realize that much of your frustration in the past came from your inner world being out of sync with the opportunity before you. You were ready physically, but hesitant spiritually, or eager emotionally, but ungrounded internally. These practices bring every part of you into harmony, ready to receive what is unfolding. You also see how these pillars guide you when your emotions fluctuate, because they will. The presence does not deny this. Feelings rise and fall. Confidence can flicker, but your readiness will no longer depend on emotion. It will depend on rhythm, on habit, on trust built through consistent connection. You sense yourself growing calm, not passive, but centered, not withdrawn, but focused. There is a clarity forming, not from knowing the future, but from knowing how to walk into it. Then the presence turns your attention toward another truth. Readiness is not proven by how much you understand, but by how willing you are to move with incomplete understanding. Not recklessly, but faithfully. Not impulsively, but intuitively. You feel this challenge and comfort simultaneously. You are not being asked to ignore wisdom, but to trust the wisdom that comes from beyond your own reasoning. The presence whispers, plan as though the path is already unfolding. Position yourself as though the blessing is already on its way. Act as though the door has already begun to open, because it has. Not in the physical world yet, but in the unseen. And what begins in the unseen always manifests in the seen. You are reminded that waiting has already accomplished its purpose. It strengthened your perception. It shaped your character. It cleared space within you. You are no longer the person who once needed everything to make sense before taking a step. You are learning to respond when your spirit is stirred, when inner peace aligns with direction, when the presence moves close enough for you to feel the shift. You hear this final truth rising above everything else. Your readiness now must translate into movement, not rushed, not frantic, simply aligned. The presence assures you that as you step into uncertainty, you will discover something remarkable. The ground will rise to meet you. Doors will open at the exact moment you reach them. What once seemed closed will reveal itself at the touch of obedience. And you realize the point of readiness is not knowing, it is trusting. You begin to feel the presence shift again, guiding you deeper into the heart of something you've sensed before but never fully understood. How profoundly your readiness is shaped by thankfulness and generosity. Not the surface-level gratitude you offer only when things go well, but the steady inner posture that acknowledges goodness even before anything visible appears. You start to realize that thankfulness isn't just an expression. It's a way of seeing, a way of receiving, a way of preparing the inner room where blessings can safely settle. The presence speaks softly, yet with unmistakable clarity. Thankfulness is not what you give after something arrives. It is what creates the space for what is coming. You feel these words anchor within you. You begin to understand why your spirit sometimes felt too crowded, too tense, too distracted to hold on to the good things meant for you. Without gratitude, blessings slide through your fingers. With gratitude, they take root. You're asked gently to look at the everyday moments of your life, the simple objects around you, the quiet routines, the shelter that covers you, the meals that nourish you, even the breath you draw without thought. You begin to notice how often you overlooked these things, not because you were ungrateful, but because you were trying so hard to reach the next stage that you forgot to appreciate the one you were living in. The presence invites you to shift this, not with guilt, but with awareness. You begin to realize that genuine gratitude doesn't require perfect circumstances. It requires presence. It requires perspective. It requires slowing down enough to recognize that even in seasons of waiting, you were cared for. Even in moments of lack, something sustained you. Even in the quiet stretches that felt empty, you were never abandoned. You hear? If you can give thanks when you have little, you prove you can be trusted when you have much. And something inside you opens to that truth. You feel your heart stretch wider, becoming more capable of holding joy without fear, abundance without attachment, purpose without striving. You are learning to appreciate not only the big moments, but the small ones that form the fabric of your days. But the presence doesn't stop at thankfulness. You are guided now into the deeper territory of generosity, the kind that flows from a soft, receptive heart, the kind that doesn't require wealth, but willingness. You're shown that giving is not measured by quantity, it is measured by spirit. A simple act, a kind word, a listening ear, a meal shared, a message sent, a hand offered can shift more than you ever imagined. You begin to see how generosity is not something separate from gratitude. It is gratitude expressed outwardly. It is how thankfulness becomes tangible. The presence whispers, when you give, you make space for more. When you hold too tightly, you shrink the place where blessings can rest. You see now that releasing something, time, comfort, effort, forgiveness, compassion, creates new openings for goodness to flow in. You're reminded that forgiveness itself is a form of giving. Letting go of resentment is not about excusing what was wrong. It's about freeing your spirit from the weight that keeps your hands closed. You begin to understand how holding unhealed bitterness blocks your capacity to receive, not because you are being punished, but because your spirit cannot grasp new things while clenched around old pain. The presence says gently, I want to give you more, but you must release what keeps your hand full. You realize that generosity isn't just about what you offer to others, it's about what you choose to put down so your spirit can rise again. This truth begins to settle deeply within you. As you absorb all this, a new understanding dawns. When you live generously, you position yourself under the flow of divine provision. Blessings find their way to you because you have learned to become a conduit, not a reservoir. What you pour out returns in ways you never expected, through help arriving when you're overwhelmed, through kindness showing up when you're tired, through opportunities emerging when you've reached the end of what you can do alone. You hear another truth. I see every gift you've given when no one else was watching. I remember every encouragement, every quiet act of compassion, every moment you chose to help someone you didn't have to help. These actions may have seemed small, but the presence assures you they carried great significance in the unseen realms. Your heart softens with the recognition that none of your goodness was wasted, none of it forgotten. Every seed planted is now beginning to form a harvest. Then the presence invites you to examine your space, your environment, your routines, your habits. You are asked to treat what you have with the honor you would give if something sacred were placed in your hands. You feel the weight of that simplicity. This is not about perfection. It's about appreciation. When you tidy your space, when you care for your things, when you tend to your responsibilities with thoughtfulness, you cultivate the mindset that welcomes increase. You realize that how you regard the things you have now reveals how ready you are for more. You feel a deep shift. This is not about proving yourself. It is about becoming the person who can live in alignment with abundance without being overwhelmed by it. The presence reveals that your current environment is not an accident. It is a training ground. It is shaping your gratitude, your discipline, your awareness, your stewardship. You are meant to learn how to create peace in small places so you can hold peace in larger ones. A new warmth spreads through you as you hear, "Where thankfulness lives, I dwell, and where I dwell, transformation follows." You begin to recognize that gratitude is not merely a practice, it is a spiritual magnet for goodness. It draws what belongs to you into clearer view. It prepares you internally for external change. It aligns your energy with the very things you have prayed for. You're told to start speaking your gratitude aloud, not because the presence needs to hear it, but because your soul needs to feel it. When you say out loud, "I am grateful," something in your energy shifts. Doubt loosens, fear weakens, hope expands. And then you're guided to express gratitude not only for what you see, but for what is coming. You learn that this form of thankfulness is not denial, it is alignment. When you thank the presence for what has not yet arrived, you become synchronized with the fulfillment already unfolding behind the scenes. The presence reminds you that giving, forgiving, sharing, and loving are not things you do after you've received. They are the qualities that prepare you to hold what is coming. They shape your heart, expand your capacity, and accelerate your growth. You begin to see how these actions are not extras. They are essential. Now the presence asks you one question, spoken with gentleness and authority. Are you living in a way that shows you are ready for more? You don't answer out loud, but you feel the response forming within you. You feel your heart preparing to shift, to rise to that invitation. You realize that readiness is not only spiritual, it is practical, it is emotional, it is behavioral, it is daily. You commit, quietly but firmly, to cultivate gratitude in every moment, generosity in every interaction, and openness in every corner of your life. Because now you understand. These are not duties, they are gateways. And you feel the path opening before you because your spirit is finally opening within you. Something inside you settles as you step into the final movement of this message. Because now everything turns inward again, calling you to examine the way you speak, the way you think, the way you carry yourself in the quiet spaces no one sees. You begin to understand a sacred truth. Your words, your thoughts, your posture are not small things. They are spiritual forces. They shape the atmosphere around you. They open paths or they block them. They draw blessings closer or they push them out of reach. And the presence begins to speak to you with a steady clarity that leaves no space for confusion. How do you talk about what is coming? The question echoes gently. Not accusing, but awakening. You recall moments when doubt crept into your voice, moments when fear tried to disguise itself as caution, and you understand now why your words matter, because your spirit listens to them. When you speak fear, your spirit contracts. When you speak trust, your spirit expands. And you hear these gentle words. Every statement you release shapes your readiness. You begin to see your language not as a reflection of your feelings, but as a tool to shape them. You are invited to speak with expectation even before evidence appears. You are told to choose words that align with guidance, not with fear. When you wake each morning, you're encouraged to declare out loud, "My steps are guided. My way is prepared. I walk in safety today." You feel how different it is when you choose these declarations intentionally. You feel how they steady you, how they rise around you like a shield. But then the presence takes you deeper, asking you to turn inward, to examine the quiet voice that speaks inside your own mind all day long. It becomes clear that these inner words, the ones no one hears, are often the most powerful. Silent doubts can quietly drain your confidence. Old stories can weaken your sense of direction. Yet the presence reminds you that you are not powerless toward these inner voices. You can choose what you meditate on. You can choose what you repeat. You can choose the stories you reinforce. You hear, "When you remember my faithfulness, your inner world gains strength. When you recall the times I carried you through what seemed impossible, your spirit grows bold again. You realize that memory can be healing when you use it as proof of continued protection. Your past is not evidence of abandonment. It is evidence of endurance, of divine presence woven through every season you thought you would not survive. The presence then guides your attention to the people around you. You feel the truth of this before a single word is spoken. Not every voice is meant to shape your journey. Some carry fear as their foundation. Others speak from their own wounds. Some talk from a place of limited understanding, never having walked the paths you are asked to walk. And you are told gently but firmly, pay attention to how someone's words affect your trust. You begin to understand that the voices in your life either strengthen your confidence or weaken it. And you are invited to choose wisely, not with judgment, but with clarity. The presence urges you to keep company with those who speak from conviction, from faith, from expectancy, to seek the ones whose lives show alignment, not just opinion, to create distance, not bitterness, from voices that have no capacity to understand what is unfolding in your spirit. Then the presence shifts again, revealing another quiet danger: comparison. You are asked to guard yourself against measuring your journey by someone else's timeline, someone else's progress, someone else's blessings. You hear, your path was crafted specifically for you. It will not look like any other. And something within you relaxes at this truth. You breathe differently. You understand that your timing is not late. It is precise. You realize how often comparison robbed you of joy, clarity, and stability. How frequently it made you forget the uniqueness of your own calling. The presence invites you to rest in the certainty that nothing meant for you can pass you by. Nothing aligned with your purpose arrives early. Nothing ordained for your future shows up late. Your journey unfolds at the pace your spirit can sustain. You begin to embrace your own story, not as less than another's, but as profoundly intentional. After this, you are guided to rediscover the beauty in simplicity. You are shown that the divine often meets you not in dramatic events, but in quiet moments. A peaceful thought, a gentle nudge, a moment of clarity, a sudden calm. You begin to understand that readiness is found not only in grand declarations, but in how you treat the small things. You recognize that appreciating simplicity opens your spirit to deeper insight, while constantly seeking dramatic signs blinds you to the subtle guidance you receive daily. The presence now leads you into the wisdom of letting go. You feel this truth settle heavily, yet softly. Letting go is not losing. It is making room. You realize that releasing control, releasing fear, releasing attachment to outcomes is how you place your future fully in the hands of divine timing. When you let go, you stop forcing. You stop straining. You stop chasing illusions of certainty. And in that surrender, peace rises, not as a hopeful feeling, but as a natural result of trust. You are reminded that hardship is not a punishment. It is a refinement. Difficult seasons do not signal divine displeasure. They reveal your capacity, strengthen your resolve, clarify your desires. You are encouraged to stand firm when things are unclear, knowing your strength is not measured by how little you feel, but by how steadfastly you choose to trust through discomfort. Then the presence lifts your vision, showing you the larger story, the one that stretches far beyond your current moment. You understand now that every decision, every act of trust, every moment of obedience ripples outward in ways you cannot yet see. Your journey is connected to others. Your courage affects more than your own life. This wider perspective pulls you out of short-term fear and into long-term purpose. Finally, the presence brings you into the heart of readiness, openness, not the passive kind, but the brave, flexible, surrendered kind that allows guidance to shape your next steps even when the way is unfamiliar. You are encouraged to stay open to unexpected paths, unexpected connections, unexpected opportunities. You hear, if you cling too tightly to your expectations, you may miss what I am doing right in front of you, and you feel something inside you loosen. You begin to trust the unknown, not because it is comfortable, but because you sense who is guiding you into it. The presence gathers all these truths and speaks them as one. Being ready is not only hearing me, it is moving as I lead you. Your readiness is seen in your voice, your choices, your company, your thoughts, your openness, your confidence in the unseen, and you feel a quiet strength rising inside you now. Something steady, something grounded, something prepared. You step forward internally, understanding that readiness is not a feeling, it is a posture, a decision, a daily alignment. You move into this posture fully, knowing with certainty that every step you take in trust draws you closer to everything that has already been set in motion for your good.